It really is a loud place to live, this nation. A lot of noise. At a critical moment, desperate for quiet conversations, reasoned thoughts, channeled emotions, and correct information with which to make decisions. People are emotionally screaming at each other instead of thoughtfully debating. But that's not the way to make national decisions on immigration, foreign policy, civil rights, health care, economic reform, or on anything else for that matter. Not waving our hands, poking charges, demonizing each other. Now that's why it is always comforting, always has been comforting and beneficial and educational to turn to Jim Lehrer telling us the news. Hear his calm voice, feel the devotion to good reporting that he and all of his colleagues model, and to know that before the hour is over, we will not have received a political pitch, but solid news, as balanced as possible, that can help us know, as Walter would have said, on any given day, the way it is. From the beginning of Interfaith Alliance, we have worked hard to see that no one monopolizes the microphone when talking about religion, and that minority voices in particular receive attention. Jim Lehrer has brought all Americans together around each broadcast on his evening news. He has helped us to get to know each other better and to understand each other better and to be afraid of what we should fear, but not to fear something conjured up by just a few people who are trying to manipulate fear. Jim Lehrer wanted us to understand the Constitution, where it needs to be flexible, where it needs to stand as if super-starched. Everything was on the table with Jim. Nothing was off the record. He, like great broadcasters and statespersons before him, wanted and worked for an educated public that could make good decisions that would benefit all people, if not in a selfish win, at least in national justice. Author of fiction and nonfiction, news reporter par excellence, and friend of democracy, Jim Lehrer, we honor you this evening with Interfaith Alliance's Walter Cronkite Faith and Freedom Award. Would you come?
Shelley's Aunt Edna told me in Sedgwick, Kansas, many years ago, she said, one day you're going to grow up probably to be a straight white male. And if by chance you are given an award that you don't believe you really deserve, smile, say thank you, and hush. I'm not going to quite hush, but I'm going to be pretty close to it. A couple of things that I want to say right here at the beginning. Nothing will ever be said about the NewsHour and what we do at the NewsHour better than my friend Jane Dixon just said it. I also am a crier. In fact, my retired partner and great friend Robert McNeil used to say, Lehrer, a good light beer commercial would tear you up. He's not far from wrong. I can't imagine, you know the old saying that you're known by the company you keep? Well, I would like to be known forever from this point on just remember the company I kept here tonight. I'm talking about Jane. I'm talking about all of you. I'm talking about Shelley. I'm talking about all of you and the work that you do. And I'm talking, of course, to be given an award in the name of Walter Cronkite. Trust me, boys and girls, men and women, for somebody who has been doing what I do for as long as I've been doing it, to get an award in the name of Walter Cronkite, deserved or not, is about as good as it's ever going to get. And I thank you so much for that. Let me just say a couple of things about civil discourse. We've been doing it for 36 years on our television program, and the reason is because Robert McNeil, when we first started, the program, by the way, when it first started 36 years ago, had the worst title in the history of television. It was called the Robert McNeil Report. Can you imagine a worse title for a television program? I was the Washington correspondent, and then after 6 months it became, my mother interceded and became the McNeil Lehrer Report. But at any rate, the first conversation I had with my friend McNeil was, he said, you know, we're going to be in the civil discourse business. And it's amazing that here we are, 36 years later, and he's long retired, and a lot of things have happened, but our program is still in the civil discourse business, and I'm very, very proud of that. I recently cited, and I cite all the time, if anybody wants to know what civil discourse is and whether or not it's possible to have it on television, just watch on Friday nights David Brooks and Mark Shields. In my opinion, they're the gold standard. By the way, just for the record, because I'm sure Diane deserves this, and to do it, David Brooks, the first time he actually started speaking, and you know, he's a great columnist before he wrote for many publications before he wrote for the New York Times, but first time he really started talking in a microphone was on Diane's program, and we essentially stole him for the NewsHour, and I'm delighted we did it, and I have no apologies. But I wanted you to know that I know that, Diane, and I wanted to acknowledge that. But at any rate, the fact is that those of you who watch the program, and I'm sure every one of you does, you know that Mark and David don't talk over each other. They don't shout at each other. They listen to each other. They're secure enough to even agree with each other occasionally. They are people, they do their homework, they do their reporting. They never attack anybody anonymously. I mean, they never attack anybody, and they never quote somebody anonymously in an attack mode. They are there to, McNeil used to say all the time, the easiest thing to do on television is to set a fire. The hardest thing to do on television is to shed light. And that is also what we do with Mark and David and with the program generally. And one other thing about that, about the program generally and the kind of journalism we practice. I was sitting next to Welton when somebody said something, went through, well, Donna went through some of the kind of dreary things that are happening, and everybody knows about the dreary things that are happening, and I said to Welton, well, other than that, everything's just great. Let me say one thing about the journalism, the kind of journalism that I practice and the kind of journalism I believe in, and I happen to believe that all serious journalists share this. Serious journalists have to be optimists. There is no way in the world you can be a pessimist and practice journalism on a regular basis. You have to believe that all the problems that you all mentioned here tonight and that are mentioned every night on the NewsHour, there's a way to solve that problem. And we're going to talk about it. If you didn't believe you could solve the problem, how in the world could you get your act together and do the work that was required to run a discussion about solving the problem of Social Security or hate, or you fill in the blanks? And every serious journalist I know is an optimist. And I know I am. And I believe that, yes, things get rough at times. And this is a rough time. Oh, but rougher than what? It's always going to be a rough time. And the way you solve a rough time is by shedding some light on it and have a discussion about it that is civilized, and you pay attention and you listen and you listen and you listen, and eventually the problem will get solved. That's what I believe, and that's what everybody who practices journalism seriously believes. One final thing, in a broader sense about the kind of journalism we practice. A few years ago, I was asked, along with some others, to attend a seminar at Aspen about the future of American journalism. And it was like all great seminars about the future of American journalism, it was off the record. which I never did quite understand. But one thing they asked, each one of us, did we have any personal guidelines that we used for our own particular practice of journalism? And if we did, would you mind sharing them? Well, here's in part what I said. These are my personal guidelines for practicing journalism that have been inculcated in and are now part of what we do at the NewsHour. Do nothing I cannot defend. Cover, write, and present every story with the care I would want if the story were about me. Assume there is at least one other side or version to every story. Assume the viewer is as smart and as caring and as good a person as I am. Assume the same about all people on whom I report. Assume personal lives are a private matter until a legitimate turn in the story absolutely mandates otherwise. Carefully separate opinion and analysis from straight news stories and clearly label everything. Do not use anonymous sources or blind quotes except on rare and monumental occasions. No one should ever be allowed to attack another anonymously. And finally, I am not in the entertainment business. Thank you again for this award.